This week on AtoZrunning, we are going to get practical and talk about the key difference between running hard and running easy, and when we should be doing both. You've heard about the 80-20 rule, you know about Lydiard and Jack Daniels and double threshold, but do you know what all of that means for you and this week's training? That's where we are taking you in today's discussion.
Welcome to AtoZrunning, where we help runners thrive. I'm Andy.
And I'm Zach. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
To our listeners in the United States, at least. Who ran a turkey trot this week?
I did.
We did. Turkey trot, by the way, runs around the holiday of Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
For that clarification. Now, the next question is, who running a turkey trot had a snowstorm the night before yours? Yeah.
We did. That's why he's saying it like
Why
that.
did we run a turkey trot?
It was so fun. I thought it was a really good time. Our boys ran the race, and so we ran with them. So we didn't run our own races per se. We jogged along with them.
Family trot.
Family trot. And yeah, it was a lot of fun, and our boys toughed it out, and I was proud to see them do it.
Yeah, they did. Now, this is another one. We're always fascinated by how running families tackle the different kind of moments in your running family progression. Mm-hmm. And so we're at one of those moments where our sons have different levels of competitiveness and different levels of interest. And so, like, some days one of them wants to run, and other days a different one does. We only have two sons, and so it's not that complicated. I get that. But they also then, in races, have different both approaches and desires to both compete. And so, for instance, oftentimes one of them will want to not try to be competitive until suddenly he's in the race, and then he's very competitive. And the other one will want to be very competitive until it starts to feel badly, and then not want to do it at all anymore. And so they're in very different places once the race is happening. Mm-hmm. And historically, we have, since there's two of us oftentimes running with both of them, we have found it effective to just run. Each one of us kind of takes a boy, and we stay with them for the race. We let them kind of set the pace, but we just keep up, which works for now because we're fast enough to do that. You know, that may not always work. But also, it has not always been possible. There's been times where one of us was racing and the other one was running with the boys. There's been other times where only one of us is there at all. So
I am really glad that we did it the way that we did it this time. Because
Tell us about it.
It was so busy. There were so many people. It would have freaked out my
Thousands.
kids. There was, like, even the first, I would say, mile was super, super congested. And so I think my boys would have been freaked out.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we both had a boy and we could keep an eye on them. And I think that was overall just a better experience for them. I think in a smaller race or a race where it thins out a little bit more, they would be okay running it by themselves or with knowing that we'll be at the finish line for them. But in this situation, I am really glad that it turned out the way that it did.
Yeah, and neither of them are terribly independent in public places. They're not comfortable. You know, as soon as they aren't exactly sure where they are or other things, they get pretty uncertain and panicky. So we definitely, in a race like this. So our turkey trot in the local trot is a very big one. Is one of the biggest ones, in fact, in the United States. And so we're talking about thousands of people running in a single 5K all at once.
I'm going to pull up how many people are in it. I was able to see that, and I think that it's very interesting.
Well, there was quite a bit fewer this year than last year, which is really no surprise because there was a pretty sizable snowstorm the day before.
Yeah. So it's even more impressive that they had one of their biggest turnouts ever. Well, it is their biggest turnout ever.
This year?
Yeah.
Did they say that?
It's like over 6,000 people.
But the results don't have that many.
Okay, so maybe that's how many people signed up.
Right. That's what I was saying. So
okay.
I know that they said they had a huge registration turnout, but the results themselves had quite a bit fewer than they had originally claimed.
Okay.
And that's probably why, because of the weather.
Yeah.
So one notable thing about this race is it's also quite competitive as far as local 5Ks go in our scene. I think there's a couple reasons for that. One is because of the Thanksgiving holiday, you get the college kids who are home, and this is a period of time, there's 2 of them during the year, where college kids are really fit, but they're not in season technically. And so college kids have ended cross country, but they haven't really started indoor track and field yet. They kind of have, but not most of them aren't really actually doing training for anything yet. And so they run these 5Ks, these local 5Ks like this, and they're really fast. And so you get the college kids who are fit and fast. You get high school kids in a similar situation, especially coming off of if they did a longer cross-country season, if they did some of the postseason stuff in Michigan. That means that they ran their last cross-country race of the season a week or 2 ago at most. So they're in good shape, and they come out and they want to run fast and try to race those college kids. And then we've got some fast adult runners certainly in the Grand Rapids area.
And also a child. I saw a 12-year-old boy who ran in the 16s. And I was like, wow, that's really solid. So
yes, so fast, competitive. However, this year was not as fast as it normally is because of the weather. And so there was a stretch. We were running along, and it wasn't terrible. The footing was okay. There was patches where it was slushy, certainly patches where it was a little bit slippery. And then we got to this one hill, in particular, only the hill portion of this street, where it was just ice, like the whole entire thing. And we're running with our sons. And so by this point in time, like 2,000 people have already run down this hill. And you would think that it would kind of like soften it up a bit. No, it was still ice. And we just basically slid down it. Like didn't lift our feet up, just kind of shuffled and just skated down the hill. And the whole time I was thinking, if I was trying to race right now, what would I have done on that hill? Like would I have just slid down as well? Or would I have like tried to go off the course onto the sidewalk and run down and then come back on the course? I don't know. But they did, and hopefully no one fell. So that was our turkey trot experience. Our boys finished. It wasn't their fastest 5K.
It wasn't, no.
But that's
But
okay.
again, it was really congested in the first mile, and the conditions weren't the best. I did have a son say to me, Mom, stop talking, because I was trying to encourage.
Oh, no. Was that DJ or was
Yes.
that Miles? Yeah, DJ. He does that. Stop talking, he says. And here's what ends up happening. So one of the boys gets very upset as the race is going on. Like, I don't want to keep doing this. And of course, you're in a race running with all these other people, and all these people hear this kid just saying like, I want to quit. And so they're all like yelling encouragement and stuff, which he is of the personality that if you try to encourage him, he resists even more. So he is a contrarian. And he wants exactly the opposite of what you're telling him he should do. And especially when he's upset. And so as soon as he starts to get upset, I'm like, you've got no choice. You have to finish this thing. And now you just have to keep up with me, because I'm not going to like slow down with him when he starts suddenly walking, and I'm not going to drag him along.
He can do it. He's capable. He's been running.
Even if he wasn't, I'm going to make him. No, so I keep running along, and he lags back and then catches back up, and he just starts like complaining, and I keep telling him, the more you complain, the more upset you are. And I use some of our tricks here at AtoZrunning that we have taught to you all about mindset, like the idea that when I am repeating negative things over and over, I actually feel them even more, and it actually makes it harder for my physiology to perform the thing I'm asking of it. So I tell him those things very reasonably and explain the science behind while he's suffering in a 5K. It doesn't work. It doesn't help, actually. It doesn't make any difference at all. He just continues
it has to be his
frustrated.
choice. Yeah.
And then he starts to wonder when the end is near. Usually he starts wondering that about a half a mile into the race, and we just don't really answer the question because it just makes him more upset. But as the end starts to get closer, I'll say things like, we're only about half a mile away. And he'll be like, half a mile? That takes forever. And I try to articulate to him that it's not that far. And then at one point I was like, see, the finish is just right up there. It's around a corner. It's very close, but he can't see it yet. And so in his mind, it's not close at all. Even if I tell him it's very close. And then as soon as he can see it, he's like, okay, we need to race now. I'm like, you could have done that this entire time prior to this. You could have had that mindset, and you would have enjoyed this so much more.
We're very proud of them. This is good learning, and it's good learning for all of us. I feel that this is something that many runners have encountered. It's figuring out how to manage your emotions as you feel discomfort.
So the moral of the story is he's learning some really good lessons at a young age.
Very young.
And he's a fighter. And so as soon as he the end in sight or a goal that he has to accomplish, as soon as he gets that in his head, then he just does what it takes, right? So we have to figure out how to get him to have that mindset throughout an entire 5K. And then, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be exciting. All right. Well, we also saw a number of you there at the 5K, and that was fun. And so always good to say hello when you see some bundled up AtoZ runners as well, which we were. But for now, we've got some interesting things to cover, so let's go ahead and get started with a conversation about when to go hard and when to chill out. When we are training as runners, we're always trying to strike the balance between pushing hard and staying easy in training. And so the mindset becomes, how much hard running should I do? How much not hard running should I do? And it is kind of a funny conversation because you get people taking whole different kinds of approaches to that. And oftentimes it's relative to goals and proximity to things we're training for. And so, for instance, we've talked to runners who have said to us, and if you're in this boat, you may well feel this way, but say I just basically run the same effort all the time. Like I'm not trying to do anything differently than that. I just run the same effort every day, and it's about the same distance. And then on the weekend, I might run a longer run with friends. And that's one thing. You get other situations where, like the middle school version of Dathan Ritzenhein, you just try to run hard every day, and that's usually the young people who do that. Like I need to get faster, so I need to run harder or need to run faster, which is then a kind of offshoot of that general mindset of, if I want to get faster, I need to run faster, which is also a kind of misnomer in training. And then you get a lot of other kinds of like foundations for our understandings of these things. Matt Fitzgerald's book 80-20 Running is an example, which came from some research conducted by a Norwegian researcher on the topic of what elite runners do. We'll get into that a little bit. You also get some reflections around like the Hal Higdon and Jack Daniels. They did something similar. Well, Jack Daniels did it, and Hal Higdon used Jack Daniels' formula. But you get some of those kinds of things where it's basically like, do this type of thing and this type of thing and this type of thing every week. And so make sure you do some intervals, make sure you do some tempo, make sure you do a long run, that kind of thing every week. And so that's like how you find the balance. You find the balance by doing each of those types. The reality is, as you might guess, this is a lot more complicated of a topic than just those things. And so what we want to do here is we want to talk a little bit about the origins of some of these mindsets or some of these approaches, and then get into what it actually means to go hard and go easy in the right ways at the right times, and how that produces the results that we desire. Mm-hmm. Some of this reflection came from a conversation I've been having with a number of people recently about what it takes to get your body to be comfortable running at a race effort. So let's say you're going to try to run a 5K and you want to run faster than you've ever run before. I'm not going to put a time on it. You shouldn't either in this thought experiment. I want to run my fastest 5K ever. And so I'm going to be training for the next 12 weeks to run my fastest 5K ever. There's a lot of different considerations to that. Part of it is just how do you build fitness, right? And do the things that build fitness, because if you're more fit, you're going to be more capable of running that. And then another layer is, how do you be neuromuscularly capable of running that fast for that long? and it needs to then be comfortable enough or manageable enough that you can handle running that fast. So you might be fit, but then it might be very difficult to get your body, like people say this all the time, I just can't run fast enough. Like I can run forever and I feel great at the end, like I'm clearly not taxed, but I can't go any faster. Well, that is a very specific thing that's going on there, and it can be remedied. That falls under this same reflection. So one of the anchoring principles that a lot of people argue about within all of this is actually was first said to me directly. I've read it in a number of places, but said to me directly when I was working with Barry McGee as my coach. And he, every time I would say, I would report to him every week. He wanted me to share a full description of my training for the week each day and how much effort I did, what type of effort I did, how long, all that kind of stuff. And I would use the phrase hard effort to describe something like days that were faster days or interval days or something. And every time I used the phrase, he didn't always reply to every single thing that I put in these notes, but every time I used the phrase hard effort, he would always note in a response. And what he would say is, he would say hard, something variation of this. No, it shouldn't be hard. That's not training. He would say that to me every time. No, don't go hard. That's not training. And he would point back to one of his 8 principles. He had these 8 principles for training. And one of them, the first one, in fact, was train, don't strain, which is an Arthur Lydiard quote. Barry McGee, if you know the history, Barry McGee was coached by Lydiard in the 50s and 60s. He was one of Arthur Lydiard's marathoners.
Olympians.
Who won an Olympic medal. One of Lydiard's first Olympic medalists when he was coaching in the early days. And so Barry McGee obviously spent a lot of time with Lydiard and Arthur, as they called him, and he adopted a lot of his sayings, and that was one of them. And
it's a good one.
And it was a good one. But it's not quite that simple. It's a principle. It's not a prescription. And that's part of what we wanted to do today. As we get into this, we say, okay, there's a lot of principles out there, but most of the time, a general principle is never intended to be a specific prescription. It's not telling you what to do for running tomorrow.
Or when.
It's telling you principles to guide your thinking as you're training. And we have to know the difference. We have to be able to then figure out what it means in the specifics. So we're going to do that.
Great.
Starting with the 80-20 running principle, which many refer to as the 80-20 rule, coming from specifically Matt Fitzgerald's book called 80-20 Running. And it's also not a rule. And this is the part where whether just getting lost in translation or just because over time things like this just kind of form, the 80-20 principle entered the running schema at large, and now everyone is largely familiar with it as a concept. You've heard people talk about it, or you at least can deduce what it's referring to. But it was never intended to be a rule. When Matt Fitzgerald wrote about it, he specifically writes in his own book on the topic that this is not something that should define specifically what you're doing, like to a precise degree. It's a kind of principle that we should be thinking about more broadly. So then we get to the 80-20 rule, which says 80% of your running is easy and 20% of it is what Barry would not like us to say is hard, or is higher effort. And so higher and lower intensity is really the principle we should be referring to. So 80% lower intensity is just as easy running. 20% higher intensity is your harder effort days. And so what that means then is that means if you look at a given week, you basically are running 2 or so days at higher effort and the rest at lower effort. And it varies slightly, but that's not a lot. No. That's not a lot. And if that's what you're doing all the time, it's probably not enough. And that was exactly what Matt Fitzgerald was referring to when he was talking about the concept in the book, that it is itself. But as these things go, they kind of evolve, and now there's like a whole kind of approach that is Matt Fitzgerald's organization, but that's like about 80-20 training plans now, and like 80-20 everything. They just use that phrase because it's known. But it's not. It's not that. It actually never was supposed to be a thing that guides our training principles. It came from Seiler's research. I can't remember the guy's full name. He's a Norwegian researcher in the early 2000s. He was looking at elite runners, and he was saying, it looks like, in general, on average, elite runners run about 80% of their volume easier and about 20% higher intensity.
And we have to remember, you're probably going to say this, in the context of elite runners, they are running so much more. They're running more jogs, extra jogs that they would do like in the morning, doing extra runs. And that all helps build the musculoskeletal as well as help aid in recovery, moving the blood around. And so it's not looking at a 50-mile per week athlete. It's looking at a 120-mile per week athlete.
Yeah. So let's use round numbers for ease of math, right? If an athlete runs 100 miles in a week and they're doing this 80-20, and you're saying, okay, 80 miles of that is low effort and 20 miles of that is high effort, I can tell you right now, I've never encountered an elite runner doing 100 miles a week who only runs 20 miles at higher effort in a single week. I've never met one. Now, that's not to say there aren't some weeks where they are, but I've encountered a lot of training approaches over the years and a lot of runners doing a lot of things, and that's not one I've seen. So what are we referring to? Well, now we get into like what Andy's saying. Well, the runner might be running 140 miles a week, and you might say, well, 80% of that is lower effort, and 20% of that, which now gets us closer to, what's another 20% of 40.
Well, I mean, that's 28 miles.
Yeah. So, exactly. So you're saying, okay, now 28 miles in the week are a higher effort. And I'm saying, okay, that's closer to what sounds familiar to me. A runner might do something like 30 miles in the week at higher effort. That would be 3 10-mile days, and everything else is lower effort. I could see that. That's a little bit more understandable. So you get why I'm getting to, like, there's a slight nuance there that suddenly changes everything, potentially. So what the data were showing was that if you take into account large periods of time and you take into account large numbers of athletes, then you arrive at this kind of generalization that was about 80-20. But none of them were doing that in specificity all the time. So it was never intended to be a principle that guides what we should be doing in our training.
Always.
Right. It was just an observation that says it's probably important to do more of our running at lower efforts than at higher efforts. And it's probably important to do quite a bit more at lower efforts than at higher efforts, because, and this is what Fitzgerald got into some in his book, because we should be running higher volumes if we're trying to advance our physiology. And so higher volumes help us advance our physiology, but in order to run higher volumes, we need to do them at lower efforts so that we don't get hurt or burnt out, etc. And so that's where we get to this kind of concept. Now, it got more convoluted than that when we continue down the rabbit hole, if you will. Because Lydiard is actually the first person who is referenced as a coach that well documented what he was doing and was used as a point of reference for the idea of running lots of easy running. And then this got really confusing because then people would use Lydiard to justify things like Lydiard said we should be doing this long, slow distance stuff, which is like really, really slow, lots and lots of running. And then people would also say Lydiard was used to justify that we should be doing easy runs all at a maximum steady state of effort, which is not at all really, really easy running. And they're talking about the same person here, and both of them can point to things Lydiard did and said that justify their claims. So who's right? And why did Lydiard say conflicting things? Well, he didn't, because both of those things are true, but they're only true in certain contexts. And so it gets gets more confusing. So to not belabor the point, but to briefly explain what Lydiard was doing with this stuff, Lydiard had an aversion to the idea of runners pushing themselves to exhaustion in training. He was like, that's not productive. It's not helpful. I want you to be able to run well tomorrow also, not just today. And he was one of the first coaches that had this mindset of like, focus on the training adaptations and how to get the most efficient training adaptations over a period of time. He was very much obsessed with that. And so he came down on the side of you need to treat every run like an opportunity to achieve adaptations, to achieve positive results in your training. And in order to do that, you should end every run, whatever type of run, however long it is, with a degree of what he called pleasantly fatigued. That was the phrase he used. He said every run, end it feeling pleasantly fatigued. If you're running 4 miles, end it feeling pleasantly fatigued. If you're running 24 miles, end it feeling pleasantly fatigued. Now, in order to do that in a 4-mile run and a 24-mile run, you need to run significantly different degrees of exertion over the course of those runs. So this is where you got into his basic formula, which was the longer the run is, the slower it is, the shorter the run is, the faster it is, and all of them are ending in the same kind of capacity.
And that is, though, during certain times in training.
Right. So then yet again, that was only in the conditioning phase of training. So he said things like running your easy runs up to maximum steady state, which is essentially the highest level of exertion you can give without beginning to cross into anaerobic threshold at all. So you're staying beneath your aerobic threshold. That's maximum steady state. So he said run all of your easy runs maximum steady state. Obviously, in order to do that, it has to be relative to the distance. And so things were slower when they were longer, faster when they were shorter. But even then, he still only said to do that during one of the periods of training, the conditioning period. He did not have his athletes doing that at all in any of the other periods of training. So now you get into like this kind of weirdness where people are saying this is what Lydiard says to do, but he only said to do it during certain points in time when you were doing certain types of training.
So maybe the 80-20 could be more accurate if you look at building phase plus conditioning phase and you say all of those.
Just add the whole total of the season
Yes.
together.
Actually, you might get 80-20.
You might actually. That's possible. That would be really funny. So, yeah, now you get into this idea, right, where different points in time. And why is that? Because Lydiard was under the impression that this certain kind of combination of things was the most effective to building up your aerobic condition. Once your aerobic condition was built to satisfaction and you were getting closer to your goal race date, then that by itself was not enough to get your body fully race ready, as high a performance potential as possible. And so then he would go into some other things. We'll come back to that. But it was really quite simple principle. You want to feel pleasantly fatigued at the end of your training run. And so he would infamously have his athletes doing interval workouts. People would say, how many are they doing? He'd say, I don't know, because it doesn't matter. They're doing enough until they feel like they've had enough. That's actually the phrase he would use. Run repeats until you have had enough. And I was like, well, after 2 of them, I've had enough because I'm sick of this. No, you teach the athlete. This is one of Lydiard's most important things he would do with his athletes. You teach your athlete to identify those signs, and then the athlete knows when it's time to be done.
And oftentimes I have conversations with athletes when discussing fartleks about that too. Like, oh man, I overdid it on a couple of them, and I didn't feel like I could get back into it and feel okay. It's like, then you're done.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Totally okay.
Yep. Yeah, and if that's the case, by the way, this is the rationale. If that's the case, then every day you finish the run having stressed your system to a degree so that you can build some adaptations, but being able to do it again the next day. Being able to stress your system again day after day after day.
And overall, just because I know people come from lots of different approaches and experiences, when he will say, like, pleasantly fatigued, in general, the Lydiard approach in conditioning is not at as high of an intensity as other programs. So when you hear that, like pleasantly fatigued each day, it's not like people are running hard each day. It's like, okay, I run a steady state, which is hard, but very easy to come back and run the next day well.
Because it's not too long.
Right. And then the next day is long, but it's really easy. And at the end, you feel good, but you're tired because you just ran a long time. You know, so it's not how it sounds. I feel like there needs to be more detail to fully flesh out what the meaning is of the pleasantly fatigued. And then also to know that before that period of conditioning, there's a whole building phase where you're just running easy, jogging.
Yeah, Lydiard didn't do that ever, the idea of the building phase.
Oh, he didn't?
No, because he did. He just didn't put that in training schedules because he just said that's what you just do
in the off season
to get ready to train.
Yeah.
Like that's not training, that's getting ready to train.
But it's a prerequisite of the body.
It
so
is.
if we're discussing it for all of us to understand our own physiology and what we need to have a successful season, we would say, yes, we need this building phase that allows for us to be strong enough to have the foundation to feel well enough to then be able to introduce different stimulus.
Yeah, and what it comes down to is, with that principle itself, is if you're just running all the time, like you're just always training, then the idea of a building phase is largely not a phase by itself. It's like downtime between seasons, essentially, is a building phase. And then outside of that, you're not needing to build up to anything because you're already in a state of training.
But as I know many runners, though, I feel like I know a lot of runners where that's not the case.
That's what I'm trying to say. So that's why Lydiard didn't consider it a phase, because Lydiard's working with athletes who are just running year round.
They're professionals.
No, not necessarily.
Most of them.
No, they weren't actually professionals at all at the time because they're all amateurs. They're all just kids that ran a lot, but they ran a lot
at
normally.
A high level. Yeah.
Eventually, yes. I'm talking about when Lydiard started working with these guys, and he's got these 19, 20, 21-year-old guys who's a brick mason who never has done any competitive running in his life.
I hear you.
Those are the people he started working with. So if he's talking to someone who's just running all the time, it's not the same thing as someone who's saying, I'm getting started training for a thing. So we have to do something a little bit differently.
For instance, can we give the example?
No, we're belaboring the point. Okay. So the idea here then is if you are striking the right balance, some approaches are going to say running these big hard efforts and then having a day or two of recovery is the kind of stress rest cycle you want, which is more what Jack Daniels does in Jack Daniels' formula. More of a higher stress, lower recovery. Lydiard was more in the middle, and this is where people got confused with like a lot of long, slow distance stuff. He does have lots of long, easy running, but it wasn't necessarily supposed to be like slow all the time. It was as slow as it needed to be so that you're only feeling pleasantly fatigued at the end. It's not any worse than that. And he didn't want an athlete running so hard that the athlete needed a day of recovery. That was the biggest thing. And this is what Barry McGee said to me over and over. It's like, you shouldn't be recovering on your easy days because that means you went too hard. That's the difference between training and straining. You went too hard on your higher effort days when you needed to actually like recover on your easier effort days. And so over time, as you do that, over time, the higher effort days initially can't be that high of an effort because you're just not ready for it yet. Your body can't adapt well enough yet. It would be too stressful and you would need more recovery time. And so then you keep the efforts low enough that you can keep repeating those things day after day in different degrees, right? So some shorter, which are faster, some longer, which are slower. And then you get to a point where you are in such good condition that you're able to do reasonably high effort day after day. And that's what the maximum steady state kind of contemplation was intended to be. It was the result of being in this kind of rhythm for a time. So that's probably an over-explanation of Lydiard's stuff and how it proved to be different than a number of other people. But that's what we mean then when we say, okay, where's the balance? Well, it's not exactly the same, because that was only in that main phase of training, and it doesn't answer the question by itself of when and if and what should we do to like really go after it. Is there ever a time to do that? And the answer is yes, actually there is. And Lydiard himself did do it. He just didn't do it in that phase of training. So we have two kind of implications here when we're contemplating some of these key sources on how much and when should we do things like high effort running. And I think this is where we get into that, like, when is it time to really go after it and really push myself? And I'm going to ask a lot of my body in the race. So how do I know that I'm actually ready to do that? How do I get ready to do that? Those are important questions to ask.
In a marathon, sometimes you have a question mark when it comes to race day because you don't put it all together in single runs. You're not going and doing extremely hard race efforts for extended periods of time.
Like running a whole marathon at marathon effort?
Yeah, you can't really prove to yourself that the pieces are ready to go.
You don't ever know for sure. We always say this with our athletes. You don't ever know for sure you're ready to run that effort for that long until you do it. Because in a marathon, we don't want you to try to rehearse full effort for a full race. If you're running 5Ks, you get to actually do like a bunch of 5Ks, and then you can really feel ready for it. Not the same for longer races. So that is true. But it doesn't mean that there aren't things. So if we're going to ignore specific race distances for a moment, there is something that we gain from significantly higher effort runs in terms of training. And yet it is not the most efficient way to build fitness. And so this is why there's a difference. If my goal right now is just building fitness and I'm just going to work on that as best as I can, then I shouldn't ever do really, really high effort runs in training. I should not do that because it's not as effective, not as efficient for building fitness. However, if I have the time and I've been able to build my condition to the point where it is very high and it's no longer progressing significantly after a week or two each time, this is what Lydiard would call good aerobic condition. You get to a point where you have good aerobic condition. You no longer really benefit much from the conditioning work that you're doing anymore. Like, it's not growing significantly. There's actually there's some science behind this that they have found that your body gets to a point in a given stretch of time where the growth curve starts to plateau a bit. It doesn't ever flatten off completely. You can keep doing this. They would say you could do this for years and years, and your condition, your aerobic capacity will continue to grow. I'm defining condition as aerobic capacity, by the way. It would continue to grow, but it starts growing less and less and less over time. And this is where Lydiard's work is so helpful to us, because he did all the trial and error for this kind of stuff, so we don't have to anymore. We don't have to figure this out. It's known, and it's not that complicated. It takes about 8 to 12 weeks. It's in that window for pretty much any human to get to the point where the work you're doing in that span of time, if it stays the same, that's an important caveat, if it stays the same, the work you're doing for that span of time starts to produce diminishing returns after about 8 to 12 weeks. And those returns diminish enough that it's no longer that helpful to continue doing that, but it's time to change something up. So this is where, if you are training for 12 weeks and every week you're building up your volume, and then your 12th week is your like peak week of volume, you're not ever going to actually reach that diminishing returns point in that kind of a process, because you're continuing to increase the training stimulus every week. The most efficient and effective training would take time to build up, and then once you've built up, then sustain that high sustained volume for 8 to 12 weeks. And that's where you're going to maximize the aerobic benefits and start to eventually see those diminishing returns. So that's where we get you're not going to train for 8 to 12 weeks and then be as fit as you possibly can be. There's more going on there. Okay, so if that's the case, then what do we do after that good aerobic condition has been built? Is there anything else we can do to better our readiness for our goal race? And there is. Mm-hmm. And that's when it's time to try some really hard running, as Barry McGee would cringe when I say.
One of the high effort benefits is that it increases your running economy. That means that you are physically going through a fuller part of your stride. You're getting stronger. You need to have the knee drive, the heel lift. So one of the benefits of higher effort running is that you're going to have better economy. And before we get to this stage, we do have that throughout conditioning, and we do it in shorter spurts as to not have those disadvantages, those high recovery needs. So I did want to say that is one of the benefits of higher effort running is better form, better economy, greater strength.
Yeah, so that what it amounts to is you need to be able to be economical. You need to be able to be comfortable in that higher degree of running, if that's what you're going to be trying to do for your race. And so spending some time doing so is the best way to get to that point. And it's not very complicated either. So you're going to be running a race. You've done some good conditioning work, and you want to time it so that your 8 to 12 week window of conditioning ends about 6 to 8 weeks before your goal race. The shorter the race, the longer that window might be. If it's a longer race, like a marathon, it's more like 6 weeks, and certainly no more than that. And so then what you need to do for the next several weeks prior to the race is you need to now completely change your training approach. This is why we say, like, that whole concept of a rule is no good. It's no good, because now for this period, you're going to completely change the training approach to the opposite of what. Then this is again, even Lydiard still did this, even though it's the opposite of what he was always saying. Now you're going to have these really big, high effort workouts followed by a day or two of very short, low effort runs to recover. So you're actually going to do the stress recover cycle in the complete opposite. And that's because that's what your body still needs to be race ready. That's the one ingredient that's not present yet. And it really isn't as valuable as the other thing. So if you're running out of time, do the conditioning work. It's more important than anything else. Keep doing that. But if you have the time and your condition is good, then you can benefit significantly from this other stuff. And this is where you get to, like, go hard. That's why I say the difference here, like, there is a time to go hard, but it's not it's not efficient. It's not as effective for building fitness, but it's great for getting yourself race ready. And so Andy said one of those benefits, the economics, the neuromuscular interactivity that we achieve. A bit of it is too, like, neuromuscular resilience. So there's two or three kinds of fatigue we experience when we're running, and one of them is just like my energy system is, like, taxed heavily, but the another one is an actual central nervous system fatigue. The idea that it is hard for me to get my body to move to the degree I want it to move. It's not that my muscles can't do it. It's not that my cells are metabolically fatigued from, the energy transfer. It's that my nervous system is, like, telling me it doesn't want to keep doing that. And so this is a way to help combat that as well, to help build that kind of a resilience too. So what do we do? I mean, it's not that hard. Hills are great. Hills are great because they're difficult, and they ask you to work at a much higher level of energy output, with a much higher level of musculoskeletal output to achieve the same end. So if you did mile repeats on flat ground, that's a good workout. If you do mile repeats on a consistent uphill mile of around 8 to 12% grade, that is a good workout. It is something completely different. And you get to go hard because then you have to jog back down the hill, and it's a pretty long jog to get back down to the bottom. So you have quite a bit of recovery. So that's one dynamic, one way. And so now what we're asking is muscle recruitment, like increase your muscle recruitment, and hills are great. But another way, and the more important one, in fact, is race level efforts, and you do them across multiple distances. So if you're training for a 5K, you should do race level efforts for 5K, 10K, 4 mile, 5 mile, like various different distances surrounding your kind of goal race. And a little bit of everything is the idea there.
And this is all if you have time and you've already maxed out your conditioning. Just a reminder, because I know you said reminder. That, but you might be really well trained and not get to where you're doing lots of time trials.
Right. And why time trials? Why don't break it up and do intervals and such? Well, this goes back to partly what Andy was saying. Your running economy benefits come from all of this kind of stuff. Interval running, time trials, all that does. But sustaining high effort runs is itself an important ingredient in your race preparedness, and it is most effectively done by sustaining high effort runs.
And we've been talking for the last couple of weeks about your mind and the piece that plays, and how to speak to ourselves, how to work through discomfort. And these are the opportunities. These are how we fine tune. And we actually, because we can say that we're going to do one thing, but then when push comes to shove, or we're actually feeling the discomfort, sometimes we don't make the right choices, and we need opportunities to face that before race day so that we have more resilient. I like that word. We've been using it a lot in this episode, but resilience to race day discomfort. It's good.
And you get to push. There's one rule with these time trials or these near race effort runs. The rule is you can't actually drain the well. You can't give 100%. You can't give a full effort because it's just too destructive on your body, on your systems, and so it's just a little bit too much recovery demand, even if it's shorter, like a 5K or 10K or something. So you do enough so that you're at a race kind of effort, but you don't like drain the well in the last 10 or 20% of the run. And you do that once or twice a week, and throw in some hills once a week as well, maybe twice. I mean, it kind of depends what we're doing here and the duration of each of these workouts. But you're getting all of these different components. Now it's time to go hard. But on all the other days during the week, you're doing like an hour jogging, like easy running. Those workouts are recovery runs now. They are not training stimulus anymore, because you're asking everything your body can give in these other sustained high effort runs.
But Andy, I'm getting slower at the end of my training cycle. My easy runs are slower than they were earlier in the season.
Who cares about easy runs?
I get this. No, I get this question and concern. And the answer is you're asking something different of your body. And so that is why every time in conditioning too, you introduce a new stimulus, you will have more need for the adaptation. The first couple of times you do things, you need more of that recovery, and it feels worse.
Yeah, also you're running slower because you're supposed to be running slower.
Yeah.
That means you're doing it right.
Good job.
In that situation, if you're doing the thing we're describing. So that's when it's time to like go after it, right? You get these opportunities to really try to push yourself, to go hard. That's not the only effective way to do it. There's many ways we can achieve these ends. Lydiard in his early days had this like distinctive interval phase that he would do, whereas like 3 days a week of just hitting the intervals hard each of those days. And that was always when he was like, go until you've had enough and then just be done for the day. And so, what interval distance do? I don't care. It doesn't matter. Do 200s, 300s, 400s, or just run to the tree over there. I don't care. But do enough until your body has had enough. Take the next day easy, and then do it again the day after that. And you just do that 3 days a week on repeat, every other day basically. But in his later years, he didn't have that kind of. He would still, in certain kinds of things, still recommend something like that, but it was not the norm. But the time trial stuff was there always. Every iteration of Lydiard's developments over time encouraged those. And so for something like marathon, now we're talking about like you're doing 25K time trial, a half marathon time trial, like varying the distances, remember, 10 miles. But you're never doing anything much longer than about, well, actually, Lydiard would say he didn't have his athletes time trial anything longer than about 25K because it's just too stressful on your system and it takes too long to recover.
And I even think that might be pushing it. Like, I think half marathon is a good.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, those are the opportunities to go hard, but there's not a lot of them, and for good reason.
So in this conversation, as we're wrapping it up, I do want to bring us back to a full-scale look. So, for instance, those of you who might be like me, who are returning from injuries or you have concerns, when we talk about when to go easy and when to go hard, going hard is not a consideration yet. And the reason for that is because your body still needs to build up. You need to gain the strength and that foundation before considering when to go hard.
That's it. So you're trying to say, Zach, you promised that you would tell us what we should do tomorrow in our training. And we have answered that if you've been paying close enough attention. Because it depends on where you're at in the process. If you're getting started, if you're just getting into training, then you should just be running easy right now and building up your volume. Get your volume to a point. And basically, so when we work with runners, everyone has a different ceiling. And it has to do with your life, your circumstances, how much time you can actually devote to training, your age, your health, and your race training goals even. What is it that I'm trying to do here? I'm trying to get as fit as humanly possible for me, or I'm trying to just sustain a good, healthy amount of training, all those things. So whatever that may mean, it's going to define your ceiling differently. But train that volume up, and that's only easy running. You don't need to be doing anything else while you're just trying to build up volume. And then let's say your volume's good and you're at a good sustainable level, and you've now got a few months here before the goal race. Now you're doing the conditioning stuff, and you need to be doing some runs longer, some runs shorter, and the shorter runs should be faster, the longer runs should be slower. And if you need more specific recommendations than that, there's a lot of good ideas out there for how to.
We also coach runners, so feel free to reach out.
We do, in fact. And then ultimately, if you're saying, okay, I'm getting pretty close to the race, I've got a month till race, and I'm in good shape, what else should I be doing? Now we're talking about you get to try it. You get to go hard and do a few of those different variations. Try some hills, do some hard tempos, or if you want to, straight to the time trial near race effort, which is essentially just a hard tempo. But do that kind of stuff. It's good. It's great. Mm-hmm. And that now tells you everything you need to know about when to go hard, when to chill out, and what all the stuff out there means for day-to-day training. Mm-hmm. With that, I think we're ready for some running trivia. And we're back with our running trivia segment, the best running game on earth. You remember the rules. So Andy and I are playing against each other.
Yeah.
But more and more of our listeners have been mentioning that they have tried to play along a little bit. And we're finding you are better at running trivia than we are. And so keep it up. This is great work. And that's not surprising to anyone on this side of the microphone.
No. They've been kind of random.
Yeah, always. It's good. Just here and there. But here's what we do. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to remind the audience of the score. Mm-hmm. 6, Zach has. I have 5.
Yeah.
So it's close.
I have a 1-point advantage.
Yeah.
We played a 10, and then we reset the score. Whoever loses the round has to buy the winner a running something. We probably have a better phrase for that. For what is the prize?
Running-related prize.
A running prize, running gift. Is there a dollar limit? We never really talked about that.
We can talk about that later.
Okay. So we reasonable running gift, and then we reset the score and we keep going. And remember, the topics are randomly chosen by the random selector, which is doing right now. Oh, interesting.
Oh, wow. This is going to be tough.
Interesting. I actually don't know if the Diamond League existed in the 1950s and 60s. We need to find out for sure. When did I'm just searching it, the Diamond League start? I know the Diamond League used to be the Golden League, And now, see, that's when it was the other thing first. The Golden League. When did the Golden League start? The Golden League track start. I don't know. I don't know the very beginning.
1998. So this isn't going to work. We
Okay,
got to re-roll.
so that's all right. So here's what we can do. We don't have to re-roll the whole thing. We can just re-roll the time period.
Okay.
So we're doing Diamond League history. We're going to do the 90s, which is the early, right?
There's only 2 years of the Diamond League.
Okay, so
Origins.
It's Origins.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. I like it. So fun and obscure facts about the Diamond League Origins.
Well, it'd be the Golden League.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. So should we say that?
Probably, as to not confuse the AI.
The AI just gets confused no matter what.
That's true. We probably won't even get questions about it.
It's always going to be confused. It's going to ask us strange stuff. Okay, so that's our topic. Sorry, everybody, for putting up with our randomizer. We need to come up with a way to... Well, no, that actually worked just fine. All right. So how are we going to do it? We're going to ask the AI to give us 3 questions, one at a time with multiple choice answer. If you know the answer, play along, and you'll find out if you got it right. And let us know if you beat us. Mm-hmm. That's relevant. Okay, ready? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
As ready as I can be. I don't know anything.
That's the wrong thing. Sorry, I hit the wrong thing. It needs to know where we are. All right, here we go. Okay, we are back with another running trivia. Oh, why is it? Sorry. It's going to do it again, but that's okay. We're back with another running trivia game day, and this time we've got a topic of the Diamond League track and field circuit, except before it was the Diamond League. So now we're going to talk about the Golden League track and field circuit, the origins of the Golden League, and in particular, we want you to be asking us questions about fun and obscure facts. So let me review that one more time. Fun and obscure facts about the origins of the Golden League track and field series. You got all that?
Absolutely, I've got it. Let's dive into some fun Golden League trivia. Here's your first question. When the IAAF Golden League was first established in 1998, it featured a special jackpot prize for athletes who won their event at every single meet. What was the original jackpot prize made of? Here are your options. 1, solid gold bars. 2, a diamond-studded trophy. 3, a suitcase full of cash. 4, a lifetime supply of running shoes. Go ahead and take a guess.
You can see if you look down now, see how you can see the options.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, now they're gone. All right. Which one did you think? Did you have a guess?
Yeah.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Guess. I guess solid gold. What did you guess?
I guessed cash.
Cash in a suitcase. Okay.
Gold would be too much. They would not give him that much.
It depends on how big it is. All right. Give us the answer. What was it?
All right, both really good guesses, but the correct answer is actually solid gold bars.
Oh, Zach.
Indeed a pretty flashy prize. If you managed to win all your events, you took home some actual gold. So well done if you went with that one.
Dude.
It's the Golden League.
I
the
know,
first
but
year of the Golden League. What else would you do?
I was thinking that
You
was
have
too
to-
obvious also that was too much
No.
money. Track and field athletes don't get to make that much money.
Well, no, they don't. But at least in the very beginning, they wanted to make it a thing. Okay, that was great. All right, give us a second question. Remember, the topic is fun and obscure facts about the origins of the Golden League.
Absolutely, let's keep going with another fun one. Here's your next question. In the early years of the Golden League, one of the meets included a unique pre-competition ritual that athletes were encouraged to participate in for good luck. What was that ritual? Here are your options. 1, touching a statue of a famous runner at the stadium entrance. 2, eating a piece of local chocolate provided by the organizers. 3, wearing a temporary gold tattoo or sticker with the meet's logo. 4, throwing a coin into a special fountain near the track. Pick whichever one you think it might be.
Wow. I
Those
have
are really
no
obscure.
idea. These are all believable. They're all believable. Okay, do you have a guess yet? You have a thought?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go! Oh, okay, I said touching a statue of a famous runner at the entrance, and you said throwing a coin into a special fountain near the track. Okay, what was the correct answer?
Well, Well, you both had really good instincts because those are definitely fun traditions. The correct answer is actually the coin in the fountain. So at one of the Golden League meets, athletes were encouraged to toss a coin into a fountain for a little extra good luck. Great guess, is it?
Which meet was it?
That was actually at the Golden Gala meet in Rome. They had this tradition where athletes would toss a coin into a fountain near the stadium for a bit of good fortune before they competed. So it was kind of a unique little Italian flair.
So we have to decide now if Zach should get a little bonus point.
No way.
Because I asked the AI to give us the meat just now, you heard, and then whispered her mouth to Andy before it answered the Golden Gala in Rome. And I was right. Okay.
I think you just get a pat on the back for that.
Okay, all right.
That wasn't one of the official questions.
We're tied 1-1. Let's see if anyone gets the next one right for a tiebreaker for the day. So give us one more question. Remember the topic, fun and obscure facts about the origins of the Golden League.
Absolutely, and I have to say well done on that little prediction. All right, here's your tiebreaker question. In the early Golden League days, one of the venues was known for giving a particularly unusual honorary title to any athlete who broke a meet record there. What was that honorary title? Here are your options. 1, honorary mayor of the stadium. 2, keeper of the golden baton. 3, champion of the golden track. 4, guardian of the fastest lap. Go ahead and choose which title you think it was.
You got a guess?
Yeah.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go! Oh,
It's the guardian of the fastest lap.
I guessed champion of the golden track, and she guessed guardian of the fastest lap.
Oh.
Let's hear it.
All right, both of those are definitely cool titles, but the correct one is actually honorary mayor of the stadium. So if you broke a meet record at that particular venue, they gave you this kind of honorary mayor title for the day. Great guess, is it?
What venue was it?
That was actually at the Bislett Games in Oslo. They had that fun tradition of calling record breakers the honorary mayor of the stadium for the day. So a little piece of Golden League trivia for you.
Oh, that's good
fun.
stuff. I love it. How good.
Very
so who else got some right? We each got one today, which means Zach keeps his lead. But I tell you what, it's only inching along, that's for sure. I like this. So when we first started doing the trivia, we would have days where they were just like easy questions. We just get them right over and over. Now it's much more obscure.
I like the interesting ones.
Yes, I think so
I like
too.
to learn too. I think it's fun to have those little nuggets.
Yeah, and then you're not just getting questions like, who won London in a world record time? It's like, well, everybody knows that.
No,
all right.
not everybody.
No, but I mean, yeah.
I feel proud of myself that I
Finish
know.
this name. Elliot Kip. I'm joking. All right, so the score now is Andy with 6 points and Zach with 7. Within striking distance. I could have a really good round next time and I could win.
You could. It's possible.
Well, we'll see. I could also get 0 because that also happens a lot. Well, there you have it. That's the full extent of our running trivia for the day, but we'll be back next time to play again with you. Make sure you play along and let us know how you're doing.
I love this because we get to give some shout outs to some A to Z runners. It was a fun time for racing. I say fun, like we make it fun, but weather wasn't great.
It was awful. It was awful.
So in some ways,
Even
not
more
a great time
impressive
for
when
racing.
people do
Right?
impressive things.
Right? Especially in difficult terrain, which was what Aaron did in the Dirty Duel and overcame to be the overall winner.
Right on.
Yeah.
In the Turkey Trot where we were, which featured something like 4,500 finishers, it was crazy. Erin also ran that one. She was 3rd in age group. Congrats, Erin. Claire, go ahead.
Was second age group and did a fabulous job.
Yeah, and Joe and Thomas also ran. And Kyle, shout out to Kyle because he ran with us as well. He
With our
was
kids.
willing
You
to
had to hear
tolerate
them.
our children. It was great.
Yeah.
And elsewhere, in an 8K Turkey Trot, Martha ran a personal best 8K and 2nd in her age group. Nice work.
Stellar. So glad to see it, Martha.
And Bill also ran the local Turkey Trot 5K, whereabouts he was at the time. So good fun all around. Everybody doing things and doing the things in great ways.
Well, speaking of difficult terrain and very hard running, let's talk about NCAA cross country championships.
It was so good. It was so good. Did you ever get a chance to watch it, Andy?
I just saw a clip. I didn't see the whole thing.
I watched them every step of the way. It was very interesting. And we're going to start with the women's race because it happened first chronologically. And so we were talking in our preview reflection about Jane Hedengren. And we probably should have spent more time as well talking about Doris Lemngole because she, is a world-class athlete and the defending NCAA title or champion. She has an NCAA record. She has multiple NCAA titles.
And she's been top 10 in the world recently,
and
right?
she was 5th in the world championships.
Fifth in the world championships. Okay.
In the steeplechase just in September. And so Doris Lemngole of Alabama, incredibly proficient athlete. And
proficient.
Yeah.
Understatement.
And yet, coming off of that late track season, I mean, she was running track still in the middle of September when most NCAA runners were already a good chunk of the way into their cross-country season. And so you don't know. You don't know. A lot of times athletes come off a long track season like that and they're just really burnt out.
Yeah.
And they just need some time to chill. Or they get back into it, but they're not quite sharp. They're not nearly as competitive. They need more time to get all the way back.
I do think that if an athlete is given an opportunity to compete at that level, even if they're young, I feel like you got to take it when you can do it because what if you don't? What if you say, okay, I can do that later, and then later never comes?
Yeah.
Like you're at the height of your career and you don't know it, something happens. You just never know. Got to live life to the fullest.
Fully agree. Take case in point, Angelina Napoleon of NC State, who as a sophomore last year qualified for Team USA in the steeplechase. And so she ran in September in the World Championships. She did great. But her cross-country season this fall probably would have been better if she hadn't done that. She's one of those that probably suffered as a result. Now, cross-country was never, it sounds like her best thing to begin with, but even so. We'll come back to that because she's relevant to the conversation later as well. So here we go. Jane Hedengren, the all-star freshman of BYU, who Diljit Taylor said all sorts of funny things about, which we said last week. She was touted as potentially the race favorite. I don't think that that's a legitimate speculation because Doris Lemngole is so competitive globally. But at a minimum, those two were the ones that if you were betting on anyone to win the race, you should have bet on one of those two.
And one of the reasons that you had not given Doris enough spotlight is because you thought maybe there would have been some question marks as to her readiness, right? Because of just having run in international competition.
Yeah, and Hedengren had been just demolishing everybody else the whole season, and she was clearly just ready to go. So no doubt at all that she was in good shape, and she proved it at the championships, but she did not prove it by winning the race, unfortunately. So here's what happened, and this is why I say this was just really exciting. The race goes off, and who do you think makes it fast? Who pushes the pace early?
I think Hedengren.
Of course. Of course.
That's the way she's been running.
It's the only way she has run all season. It's where she's comfortable. That doesn't mean that's the only way she can win a race, but clearly she felt her best advantage was the fastest race possible. I would have done the same thing in that situation. If I were Diljit Taylor advising Hedengren, I would have said, we don't know how truly ready Lemngole is right now. We know that coming off of a late track season, a lot of times the athletes aren't quite as sharp, they're not quite as vigorous, and so a fast early pace can be more stressful for that athlete than for Hedengren. And so I would have suggested the same strategy. And it was a good one, but not good enough. So here's what happens. Hedengren leads most of the race, just most of the whole entire thing. 6K on the cross-country course. It wasn't the greatest day. It was like rainy, and so the course was wet and soggy, and there was some muddy stretches, but by no means slow. I mean, Hedengren still ran faster than she did on the same course earlier in the season, despite the conditions.
Wow.
Which says something, yeah. But you say that, but almost everyone who ran on both races ran faster the second time.
That means they're peaking at the right time.
Exactly. So it goes until about a K to go, and then Lemgole takes over, and Hedengren stays with her. She can't break her. She's pushing, but she's not doing anything crazy, but she's pushing. But Hedengren will lose a little bit of space, and then she'll catch back up. She's fighting for it, but she's fighting a winning battle until the last 400 meters when Lemgole just floored it and left Hedengren walking. Almost literally, not at all. So Lemgole put 13 seconds on Hedengren in the last 400 meters, which is hard to do anywhere, but in a cross-country race, when you're tired at the end, like, that's serious running.
Let me just say, though,
Yeah.
steeplechase prepares you for that because you feel terrible at the end of a steeplechase.
No doubt about it. So there you go. Lemgole defending her title. She now has 5, I believe, NCAA titles.
Snap.
And this is only her third season. And she's won a Diamond League race, 5th in the World Championships. Like, she's got some accolades.
Here's a speculative question. Will any of these women compete for world cross-country championships, do you think?
Lemgole, very likely, would.
Okay.
Because, well, I guess we don't know. Kenya's so strong in cross-country that they don't really need her. They'll win either way, probably. So we'll see. Yeah, but not Hedengren for sure. She would not. Okay. Guaranteed. All right, so relevant, by the way, because World Cross Country Championships this year is in the US of A.
Woot woot.
Yeah, very exciting. Okay, so that's essentially what happened, and then everyone else was kind of ways behind. It was the two of them racing each other, but the team race was crazy. The team race was really exciting. So you've got the likes of BYU defending NCAA team cross-country champions, and NC State, who won all 3 of the previous iterations before BYU won. And so NC State coming back for, a little bit of revenge here, I think. BYU has Hedengren, who finishes 2nd, Riley Chamberlain, who finishes 4th. That's a crazy 1-2 punch. But NC State has Hannah Gapes, who has just a day. She had a great day. Finished 5th. And Grace Hartman, who everyone knew was going to be up there, finished 6th. And so now look at this 1-2. BYU 2nd, 4th. NC State 5th, 6th. But the bulk of the 16-point margin that separated these two teams at the end came from NC State's 3rd and 4th runners, who just killed it.
Wow.
Crushed it. And gave NC State the title over BYU 4 now of the last 5 years. They have won the cross-country title.
They got to feel really good about that because that is very much a team effort.
And I mentioned Angelina Napoleon earlier, coming off of that late track season. She still finished in NC State's top 5. Did not have the cross-country race at Nationals that she probably would have if she didn't have that late track season. She was hurting by the end of that race, but she still finished well.
Yeah.
And I said their 3-4 were clutch. Angelina Napoleon was one of them. So there you have it. Oregon, by the way, was not far back. 23 points back in 3rd. Their big weakness was they did not have a strong second runner. So you've got NC State and BYU with a 1-2 punch like that. Oregon had one up there also, but their second was quite a ways back. And so that was about it. I mean, otherwise they probably would have been in that mix too. All right. On the men's side, the race was not nearly as exciting. It was actually really, really boring for almost the entire thing. It was slow. It was very interesting. So you've got some clear favorites in this race, like guys who are probably going to be able to win on any day, anytime. And there's only a small handful of them. So why did they let it be slow? Because as you know, the longer a race is slow, the more people have a chance to win it.
It's true.
Well, they did. For whatever reason, they did. In the end, however, it was 1 mile to go. So they run a 10K, by the way, in cross country for the men. And so with a mile to go, 5 miles in, it was New Mexico's Habtum Samuel who just made this devastating move up a hill. At the same time they're running uphill, he takes off.
Kind of love that strategy.
Yeah, and no one responded right away.
Yeah.
It just like took everyone by surprise. It was so sudden. Rocky Hansen of Wake Forest, who was one of the pre-race favorites, like he's got a good shot at it. His season's been going incredibly well, and yet he responded, but not quite quickly enough, and he ended up staying close all the way through the line, but he couldn't quite catch Samuel, and no one else could quite catch Hansen, and so they finished first and second. As such, Hampton Samuel, the king of second place. He has been second more times, I think, in NCAA championships than anybody else.
Well, I'm happy for him then to get his day.
Indeed.
Yeah.
He stayed out of trouble. They kept saying he's probably intentionally trying to kind of stay back a little bit and off to the side so that he's just out of trouble, because last year he lost a shoe. Remember, that was the big thing.
Oh, yeah.
He was the favorite last year. Lost a shoe, ended up finishing second.
That's so tough.
And he lost a shoe pretty early, and so he was just running with one shoe almost all the
Oh,
race.
my goodness. That sounds like an injury waiting to happen.
Well, speaking of injuries waiting to happen, there was craziness going on in the men's race, like cutting corners.
Yeah, I did
guys
not like that.
falling. There were hay bales, and people kept running into them.
Yikes.
It was pretty crazy.
That's a mess.
Yeah, real sad day for Iowa State men's team, who were hoping for a possibility at a title here. They were set up well, having a great season. They were the preseason favorites, in fact, coming in ranked first in the season. A great recruiting class helped, but they had two clutch falls. Two top 5 guys on their team fell. One was early on, and he did make up pretty much all of the ground. But when you fall early in a race like this, you lose like 150 places.
Yeah.
Like just everyone goes around, and then he had to work his way back through that crowd.
Yeah, it's more work for certain.
Oh yeah, but it was the second fall late in the race. One of their guys was cutting the corner, so I guess it's on him. He was cutting the corner, and he ran into a hay bale and tripped over it. And that was it. They never recovered from it. So who did it end up being though? Who ended up taking the title? Well, it was always ever going to be Oklahoma State.
Okay.
They won the race with 57 points. It's the lowest score in like 25 years.
Wow.
It was incredible. I think they are the only other team who has scored that low of a score in the last 25 years.
Crazy.
And they finished their top 3 guys were 4th, 5th, and 6th.
That's nuts. And also so cool to have a trio rocking like that.
Yeah. And their 4th guy, by the way, was 12th.
That's not bad. Not bad at all.
You're not struggling to win a race when you put 4 guys in the top 12.
That's
in
nuts.
the entire NCAA.
How cool. How
Yeah. So there you go. OSU, another title. I can't remember, did they win last year or the year before? But their winning ways are continuing. Interestingly enough, though, OSU was not deep. They had 5 very strong runners. Clearly, they demolished the field. But if any of those 5 had a bad day, their 6th and 7th were way back. So it's kind of like interesting to think like
they would have fallen
they were
over
fragile.
the
If they were Iowa State in this instance, if they had a fall, they were out. I mean, they were not winning that race.
I would have expected Iowa to do better over hay bales.
Come on now. New Mexico, as a team, finished 2nd, and that was their school's first ever podium finish at the NCAA cross-country meet. Very exciting. And a very strong top 4 for their team as well. Hampton Samuel won the race, and then they had guys finishing in 8th, 13th, and 20th places.
Fantastic.
4 in the top 20. Not bad at all. Most years that wins the race. It's amazing. Amazing that you can't win a race, but you can put 4 guys in the top 20. All right. So a lot of reflections right now in the college running universe around how things are starting to change a bit. The money, now athletes are getting paid quite a bit more, roster limits, programs just closing completely because of athletics budgets at schools, all that kind of stuff. And part of the equation now is a significant influx in international runners, in particular, highly accomplished international runners, like athletes who have already been successful in the sport coming into the NCAA, which is raising some ire because many people talk about the NCAA as a kind of like development league, like take young athletes who are not ready for the professional scene yet. They're not at the very highest caliber, and give them 3 or 4 years in the NCAA, and by the time they're out, they're world class. That tends to be the case. But when you take a runner who already is world class coming into the NCAA, it kind of changes the chemistry a bit.
Well, are there age limits?
There are not.
Okay.
So, well, there kind of are. There's very specific things that limit someone age-wise. An example of this is you can only have a certain number of competitions as a professional athlete, or like not necessarily professional, but like not amateur athlete. So, for instance, if a runner comes into the NCAA, they want to run in the NCAA, but they finished in the top 10 in the World Marathon Majors the last 4 times, they wouldn't be able to run in the NCAA. There's something in the rule that says, well, because you're
a certain amount,
because you've done all of this racing, yeah. So there's that. If you're competing regularly at a high level, it doesn't have to be a high level, but you wouldn't be otherwise. But if you're competing regularly in a non-amateur setting, like not in school setting, then that can take away NCAA eligibility, and it takes it away in chunks. So you lose a year. If you did more competing, you lose another year. So it like limits
it.
So there's
interesting.
Yeah, and I tried to read through some of these rules. They're all very convoluted. We don't want to spend a ton of time on it. But the thing that's been curious is during COVID, they removed requirements at the NCAA level for SAT and ACT test results. So prior to COVID, you have to have an ACT, SAT, or both to be able to get into the school, right? To get into the school and then participate in sports. And so international athletes would have to like prepare for those tests, or what they would most often do if they weren't able to take those tests yet, or they weren't able to take them proficiently enough yet, then they would go to a junior college for a year or two and spend some time in academia and then get a test result and then go into the NCAA. That was a very common process. You saw that quite a bit. Also, this is where we'd get things like athletes going into other divisions, like the NAIA. They'd go to the NAIA for a year or two and then transfer to the NCAA. It was because of things like that. So COVID, for whatever reason, I never understood this. Why does a COVID pandemic mean we should not have tests anymore? I don't know. Anyway, that's what happened, and they never reinstated. And so there was a couple years after COVID, there was some kind of ruling passed that was in the name of like fairness and equity or something, that we shouldn't have tests as a entrance result.
Probably because they couldn't do in-person proctoring.
No, it's because it's political. It was purely political.
Okay.
But either way, the international athlete benefits significantly from that because they don't have to mess with that whole like figuring out how to get a test result before they could go participate in the NCAA. Okay. So now the pipeline of training camps in Kenya to NCAA schools was streamlined. And the only obstacle at that point was money. But they changed a lot of the money rules recently. This is where we're getting to like the funding thing. They changed a lot of the money rules, so now schools can pay for athletes to come. Before it was like the athlete had to pay for their plane ticket, except they'd come up with ways to like pay this guy over here and then he would pay for the plane ticket over there, like that kind of stuff. But it had to all be under the table. Now it's all above board. And so you've got way more international talent in the NCAA than previously.
And I think that will actually make us better. I think that it will help our development for our NCAA athletes, probably like Hedengren. I think that will be helpful to her to have really good talent surrounding her. But on the other side of things, if it is a development, it's supposed to be younger athletes that are out of high school and they're in the in-between, and it's this development. I can see why it can be challenging because a lot of athletes are coming that are fully developed, that have run professionally, and that also then deters from the object of developing athletes.
You're forgetting one important thing.
What?
Roster limits.
Oh, roster limits. That's really tough.
So add to the same equation. So you could say rising tide lifts all ships, but what if in order to have a rising tide, you need to take more boats off the water? So those developing athletes who are not Jane Hedengren, top tier athletes, who would have been like 6th, 7th, 8th kind of person on their teams, and that same team brings in 3 international athletes, those are 3 spots. They're not 3 more people on the team. They're taking 3 other people's spots. And if those are globally competitive athletes who are already well developed, and you're saying, so this is the whole point of like NCAA is a development league. It's not really developing athletes anymore. Then you're trying to win races. And that's where. So we're not necessarily trying to justify one thing or another here, but where the tension has been coming from is that there's a lot of people looking at all of this and saying, we feel like the thing the NCAA is supposed to be able to do for the sport is not possible if these are the conditions that it's operating under.
The worst one, I think, was limiting opportunities to have full teams, and now there's like tiny teams.
There's 12-person roster limits.
Really
like there's
tough.
really small roster limits.
It's not even that expensive of a sport.
It's not. It makes no sense. Like, let them have 10 guys, 10 girls on the team who aren't contributing heavily, but can actually like participate in the, Nope. There you go.
Remember,
money talks.
Dakota Lindworm was a walk-on, and then she became an Olympian.
You know who else was a walk-on? Connor Mance's wife. So, speaking of one of our other, that was a great transition. Kylie Mance, wife of Connor Mance. That's not the only reason that she's a significant human, but it's relevant because she didn't run. She ran like one season of high school cross country or something, and she didn't really like it. It might have been track, but either way, she didn't want to keep doing it. She didn't really run. She went to BYU. She married Connor Mance, and after marrying Connor Mance, I don't know if he convinced her or if she just like was around running so much more than at that point, she decided she wanted to try some running stuff. And she walked on to BYU's team. She ended up running, I think she like finished under 35 minutes in the 10K. Like, yeah, she was decent, but not a contributor at all. So speaking of, developing runners, Kylie Mance just ran her debut marathon, paced by husband Connor Mance.
How cool.
Recent American record holder.
And good on them for being able to do something like that together.
Yeah.
We would have a hard time.
Yeah, for a whole marathon. Can you imagine? That would be such a bad time. Kylie was going for the Olympic trials, qualifying standard of 2:37 in her debut. She did not hit it, unfortunately, and she would describe it as being awful. She told Connor at one point she wanted to stop, and he said, "You don't get to quit." I don't know exactly what he said, but it was basically that. And she didn't quit. She ended up finishing in 2:43.49. What's your PR, Andy?
Close to that, 2:43 something.
You don't know the exact second of your PR?
I know.
It's faster than that. But only by a touch.
But it was my 3rd marathon.
But if you consider...
Oh, wait, no, that was my 2nd marathon. My 2nd marathon, I ran 2:43.
Well, anyway.
And my 3rd was the Olympic trials, which I ran slower. That
was not the same thing. So Kylie Mance ran her first marathon with Connor. She ran 2:43, which is a very respectable time.
He has to say that because it's the same time.
No, it is great. And you can bet that they're going to make more attempts at the...
if he can convince her to do another one after being in pain.
Yeah.
Because she then said, I saw a quote or something like, people say you really have to respect the distance, and I fully believe that now or something. I don't know. It wasn't exactly that, but she mentioned that quote.
Yeah.
You have to respect the marathon.
That's true. So we'll see. But that was kind of some fun news. They ran, I can't remember the race. Forgot all about it. What it was called. But anyway, it was a very...
Why'd you bring that up then?
Because it was a very small race.
Oh.
It was basically just the two of them running together the whole time.
And she won then, right?
Yeah. And so you got to figure if she like went to CIM or something, it could probably be a different experience for her.
Right.
So we'll see. And other news, the Japanese 10,000 meter national record went down this past weekend.
That's big.
Yeah. Mibuki Suzuki ran 27:05. So the thing about Japan that has always been true since Lydiard brought his training methods to the Japanese coaches, it's a whole big thing. Lydiard showed up, did like clinics for the Japanese coaches, taught them all about training, and then ever since then the Japanese have been really good distance
They're always
runners.
good.
I know. They're always good. They are so deep. So the Japanese national record is 27:05 now, which is not terribly competitive globally. It's a good time. it isn't even fast enough to qualify for the World Championships, which is 27 flat. Now, he has a world ranking high enough that he would still qualify for the World Championships. But the difference is there are also like 60 more Japanese runners who ran within a minute of that time in the last year. So not the fastest individual time, but what a deep culture of
I just
fast
remember
distance
you
running.
gave like a stat at one point, and they had so many guys who had run around like 2:10 or something.
Yeah.
And it was outrageous how many had
Yeah.
run that fast. But they're not winning the race very often. Occasionally, yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And lastly, two guys walked into a little grocery store on the East Coast with their phone. They pressed start, and they proceeded to walk a marathon in the grocery store for some strange reason.
Why?
I don't know why. But the part that apparently is just for kicks and for content. The part that is funny, this is, by the way, is reported by the Marathon Handbook. They were like 4 hours, they were more than 4 hours in before any employees at the store stopped to ask them what they were doing. That's 4 hours of walking around this not very huge grocery store before anyone thought this is a little weird.
That's bizarre. Yeah.
How good. But they still let them finish. So
Didn't they
did.
hear of the mall? The mall would have been
That's
a
not
much
the point.
larger blueprint.
They did end up having to buy a bunch of stuff, though, to justify being in a grocery store for 5 hours and 50 minutes or something. I can't remember the exact time.
Well, you should at least get your grocery shopping done if you're going to spend that long in
I
a
believe
store.
it is a world record for the fastest marathon run in a grocery store.
Probably the only one ever done, ever.
I sure hope so. Well, there you go. We wanted to end on a fun note, and that was your fun note. Little trivia fact for the day. I bet you could beat AI in a trivia contest with that fact in hand.
Well, so much fun. We love having this time together with you. We love sharing in community, so reach out. We love it. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you again soon.